Now read this.
Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the Castle of Llyr, Chapter 13, The Ladder. Why, they're gone! Terran quickly flashed the golden light about the chamber. Every one of them! Yes, yes, Gurgi cried. No more shriekings and squeakings. I can't say I'm unhappy about it, added the bard. I get along well enough with mice, and have always been fond of birds, but when you put the two together, I'd just as soon avoid them. The bats may prove our best friends and surest guides, Terran said. Rune has struck on something. The bats have found a way out. If we can only discover it, we can follow them. Quite so, answered the bard, making a wry face. First thing would be to turn into bats ourselves. Then I dare say we should have no difficulties. Terran strode hurriedly from one end of the chamber to the other. He played the bauble's light over the walls, sending the beams upward to the sloping ceiling of rock, scanning each crevice and outcropping, but saw only a few shallow niches from which some of the ancient stones had fallen. Again and again he swept the golden light around the cave. A faint, shadowy line seemed traced amid the stones high above. He stepped back and studied it carefully. The shadow deepened, and Terran realized it marked a narrow ledge, a flaw in the rock. There it is, he called, holding the bauble as steadily as his trembling hands allowed. There, you can barely make it out. The wall curves and hides it, but see where the rock seems to dip and break. Amazing, cried Rune. Astonishing. It's a passage, rightly enough. The bats have gone through it. Do you think we can? Setting the golden sphere on the ground, Terran strode to the rock face and sought to raise himself by grasping the slight ripples of stone, but the wall was too sheer. His hand slipped, clutched vainly for support, and he fell back before he had been able to climb his own height. Gurgi, too, attempted to scale the smooth surface. For all his agility, he did little better than Terran, and he sank down, puffing and moaning. Just as I said, glumly remarked Fluda. All we need is a few pairs of wings. Terran had not ceased to stare at the high passageway, taunting him with the promise of freedom beyond his reach. We cannot climb the wall, he said, frowning, but there may still be hope. His eyes turned from the distant ledge to the companions, then back again. A rope would not help us, even if we had one. There is no means of securing it, but a ladder. Exactly what we need, said Fluda. But unless you're prepared to build one on the spot, we shouldn't waste our time grieving over something we don't have. We can build a ladder, Terran said quietly. Yes, I should have seen it at once. What? Cried the bard. A flam is clever, but you're going far beyond me. We can do it, replied Terran, and need seek no further. We ourselves are the ladder. Great Bellin, shouted Fluda, clapping his hands. Of course! Yes, we shall climb on each other's shoulders. He ran to the wall and measured it with a glance. Still too high, he said, shaking his head. Even the topmost man would reach it with little to spare. But he would reach it, nevertheless, insisted Terran. It is our only escape. His only escape, corrected the bard. Whoever climbs out will shorten our ladder by that much. Our choice is hardly better than what Glue gave us. He added, Only one of us can save himself. Terran nodded. It may be that he can drop a vine down to the others, he said. In that way. He stopped. Glue's voice filtered into the chamber. Is all well in there? Called the giant. It's going splendidly out here. I've made everything ready. I hope you're not too upset. Would one of you mind stepping forward? Don't tell me which. I don't want to know. I'm as sorry as you are. Terran turned quickly to the Prince of Mona. I know their hearts, and I speak for my companions. Our choice is taken. It is too late to help to save us. Try to make your way to Caer Calor. Should Kor find you, he will guide you there. I don't intend leaving anyone behind, replied Rune. If this is your choice, it is not mine. I shall not. Prince Rune, Terran said firmly, did you not put yourself under my orders? The stone had begun to grate in the passageway, and Taran could hear Glue's frantic snuffling. "This, too, you must take," he said, pressing the bauble into Rune's reluctant hand. "It is rightfully Eilonwy's, and it is you who shall give it back to her." He turned his eyes away. "May it shine brightly on your wedding day." Gurgi had clambered to the shoulders of the bard, who braced himself against the wall. Rune still hesitated. Taran seized him by the collar of his jacket and dragged him forward. Taran climbed onto Fluda's back, then to Gurgi's. The human ladder swayed dangerously. Under the weight of the companions, the bard cried for Rune to hurry. Taran felt Rune's hands grasp at him, then slip. From below came Gurgi's laboured breathing. Taran clutched Rune's belt and heaved upward as one knee and then the other was thrust upon his shoulders. "The passage is too far," gasped Rune. "Stand up," Taran cried. "Steady, you're nearly there." With a last effort, he forced himself to raise as high as he could. Rune scrabbled at the ledge. Suddenly Taran's burden was lifted. "Farewell, Prince of Mona," he called, as Rune swung himself to the narrow outcropping and plunged into the passage. Fluda cried a warning, and Taran felt himself falling. Dazed and breathless on the stones, he tried to regain his feet. It was utterly dark. He staggered against the bard, who pulled him from what Taran realized was the entry to the chamber. A rush of chill air told Taran that Glue had pushed the rock aside, and he sensed, rather than saw, a darker shadow thrust into the opening. Taran unsheathed his blade and swung it wildly. It struck something solid.
"Ah! Ow!" cried Glue. "You mustn't do that!"
The arm pulled back suddenly. Taran heard Fluda draw his own blade. Gurgi had scuttled to Taran's side and was throwing stones as fast as he could pick them up. "We must stand against him now," Taran cried. "We shall see whether he's a great coward as he is a liar. Hurry, give him no chance to shut us in again." Swords raised, the companions flung themselves out of the chamber. Somewhere, Taran knew, Glue towered above them, but in the blackness he dared not strike with his weapon, fearful of harming Gurgi or Fluda stumbling along next to him.
"You're spoiling it all," wailed Glue. "I shall have to catch one of you myself. Why are you making me do this? I thought you understood. I thought you wanted to help me."
Wind whistled over Taran's head as Glue snatched at him. He threw himself down among the sharp stones. To one side he heard Fluda shout, "Great Balin, the little monster can see better in the dark than we can." Until now, the companions had clung together, but Taran's sudden movement had torn him away from the others. He groped to rejoin them, and, at the same time, to escape Glue's frantic lunges. He tumbled against a pile of stones that gave way with a clatter, and went sliding into a stream of noisome liquid. Glue wailed in resounding despair.
"Now you've done it. You've upset my potions. Stop it! Stop it! You're making a mess of everything!"
What must have been Glue's foot came stamping down nearly on top of him as Taran lashed out with his sword. The blade rebounded in his hand, but Glue yelled horribly. Above Taran, an almost invisible shadow seemed to be hopping on one leg. The bard was right, Taran thought in terror. The greatest risk from Glue lay in being trampled. The ground shook under the giant's feet, and Taran leapt blindly from the sound. Next thing he knew, he fell with a splash into one of the pools dotting the cavern. He thrashed wildly and flung out his arms, seeking a handhold on the rocky edge. The water glittered with a cold, pale light. As Taran scrambled about, bright, luminous droplets clung to his drenched garments, his face, hands, and hair. Escape for him was hopeless now. The glow would betray him wherever he sought refuge. "Run!" Taran shouted to the companions. "Let Glue follow me!" In one stride the giant was at the pool. By the light of his own dripping body, Taran could make out the huge shape. He thrust forward with his blade. The eager hand of Glue brushed it aside.
"Please, please, I beg you," cried Glue. "Don't make things worse than they are. Even now I shall have to boil my potion again. Have you no consideration, no thought for anyone else?"
The giant reached to seize him. Taran raised his sword high above his head in a last futile gesture of defiance. Golden rays burst around him, brilliant as noonday. With a scream of pain, Glue clapped his hands to his eyes.
"The light!" he shrieked. "Stop the light!"
Screaming and roaring, the giant covered his head with his hands. His ear-splitting bellows rang through the cave. The stone icicles trembled and crashed to earth. The crystals split and showered Terran with fragments. Suddenly Glue was no longer standing, but stretched full length, half covered by the shards, lying motionless where a falling crystal had glanced off his head. Terran, still dazzled, leapt to his feet. At the entrance to the chamber stood Prince Rune, the bauble blazing in his hand.
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.